Okay, we are back. Welcome, Jordan, and welcome, Sam. You guys have both been on here before. And today we're going to talk a lot about probably Mark Carney being Canada's 24th Prime Minister without being elected. Sam is also Canadian, as most people know. And as you can tell by the beautiful stars and stripes behind Jordan there, probably a dead giveaway that he's an American. So.
And my little Trump figurine. You like him?
And your little Trump figurine, yes.
He
I was
talks
actually going
too.
to ask you last week.
Yeah, he talks.
I wanted to know if he does the Trump dance.
No, he just here, ready. He'll say something if you want. You want him to say something?
Yeah, let's hear him.
Let's hear what he's got because it's random. I don't know. He could say anything as is usual, right? It's very lifelike.
Yeah. For every one new regulation, 2 old regulations must be eliminated.
Okay, so we could do that more,
enough.
but actually it went from every one to 2. Now it's like every one is like 10 have to be taken away now.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. So now it's like 10. So every time now it's 10. Every new one regulation he's got to eliminate 10.
Okay, I'm going to throw it over to Sam and get Sam's perspective on Mark Carney, the Liberals, and what has happened here in Canada over the past week, past few months. And Sam, you jump in there. And what do you have? What are your thoughts? What do you have to say?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me on, Dave. And sorry, it's Justin, right? Jordan or Justin?
Jordan.
It's a pleasure to meet you, Jordan. And as someone who has served your country in uniform, my hat goes off to you for the role that you've had to help keep people and families safe.
Thank you. I served as just so we're clear, I don't want anyone to get confused. I wasn't not in the military. I served as a police officer. So just so everyone's clear.
Yeah. And to me, there's really no distinction. A warrior is a warrior. And I know that certain groups will differentiate themselves once you're in that sheepdog club, so to speak. But for me, it's just gratitude to you and to what you've done to help keep your community safe. So right here,
I appreciate it.
Okay.
Thanks, Sam. I appreciate it. Thank you.
There's up here in Canada, Dave. It's still kind of more of the same. We're in a period of transition right now. Mark Carney is the sworn-in prime minister. However, he's subject to an election, which will be taking place in the coming weeks
or months.
Or month. The process will be starting in the coming weeks. Now, that being said, the Liberals have seen a real uptick in popularity. This whole idea of a Liberal talking tough, kind of amusing to a lot of us up here. We're ready for my personal political views, guys. As you know, has been much more of a conservative. I'd say a centrist, but leaning conservative. I've always been in line with the conservative-ish Republican governments formed south of the border. But now, despite everything that's happened and the terrible legacy that Mr. Trudeau has left for us and our country and our children and our relationships around the world, as we're seeing right now.
We're not just with the U.S.
We're in repair mode. We're going back to old friends who we haven't talked to, basically discarded years and years ago, because of our strong relationship with the United States. That's not a friend, right? We're scrambling around looking for allies around the world right now, because the ally that we thought we had forever is not the case. So somehow in Canada there's a liberal pulse still after everything that's happened. I'm hoping that Mr. Poilievre comes out and clicks his conservative heels, and I hope he has something, because if he doesn't, we're in for another Liberal term, which is oddly enough the same cabinet, for all intents and purposes, the same cabinet as the previous Trudeau government. So it does look similar. Like from someone on the outside looking in, it could be seen as a Trudeau shadow government, representing essentially another Liberal Trudeau term. So yeah, things are going great up here.
Well, let me ask you from my perspective down here. With Trudeau, you were saying you're trying to make friends again. So, other than the United States, where obviously there is obviously some tension right now, but who else did he spoil relations with around the world, as far as you're concerned?
Everyone. He totally isolated. We've been totally isolated in Canada to our relationship with the U.S., to the point where I know we share, for the most part, we share a lot of the same physical characteristics. Like we all look the same, we talk the same. I mean, I know we will find the differences, but someone from Europe doesn't necessarily understand the differences between Canadian and Americans. Constantly trying to differentiate ourselves from our American friends around the world. I don't know why that's on Canadians' minds. I don't know why it's so important to differentiate between us and ourselves and our American friends, other than I can think of it as just a real extreme case of little brother syndrome, trying to be your own person in a much larger, dangerous, complex world. I think is kind of where it all comes from. But I don't believe at this point that there's any anti-American sentiment in Canada when it comes to the American everyone I talk to is just hoping that we can weather the storm and let this blow over, and hope that any next administration doesn't just simply adopt some of the bills that you had referenced. We're hoping that a change in regime at some point down in the States would just be a bit more favorable to the beneficial relationship that's always been there in the past, as opposed to annexation.
Well, I don't
obviously
I don't think he's really serious about. I know he talks about it. I think he's just poking. He's trying to needle. And the more, I guess, Trudeau, the more he showed it bothered him, the more Trump was going to do it. And the same will go for Carney, and the same will go for if it's Poilievre. But I just think it's just him trying to get the best deal for the United States, because he's somebody who's just felt that the United States has been taken advantage of, not just by Canada, but by everybody, as far as tariffs, as far as us, even with NATO. I mean, as far as us just footing the bill for everything, and this even now with Ukraine, footing more of the bill than everybody else was. And we're not saying that we have. I mean, since World War II. And then there was plenty of wars that we got involved in that we never should have. And I think at this point, he's trying to reset everything. It's a complete reset, and it's not easy to do. And you're going to ruffle some feathers, but I don't think he's trying to make enemies, of course. And you said the people of each country are not enemies. There will never be a war between Canada and the United States. It's not going to happen. But I just think he's trying to reset things to where he sees it. And he's been consistent with this for his whole life. If you go back 40 years, interviews on Oprah Winfrey, anywhere, he's been talking about the United States getting ripped off for 40 years. This isn't new. So nobody really should be surprised that this is what he's trying to do. And I think if you had strong leadership up there, it would have been it would be a different story. Now, what Ford tried to do. And Dave, you and I talked about this last time I was on, and we said about the electricity. And we both said to ourselves, he's not gonna threaten to do that. And then about what, a week and a half later, what does he do? Oh, I'm gonna turn the electricity off. I mean, okay, that is a mistake. Obviously, it's not something you want to do. It's not something you should do. There's ways to negotiate and be tough without being crazy. And I think maybe he's thinking, I got to be crazy because Trump's talking about annexing Canada. I think too many people, they just don't know how to read him. They don't.
Nobody knows how to read him.
No, but I think a lot of the people that voted for him, and I'll vote for him if he could run 50 times, I'd vote for him. I know how to read him. I know when he says stuff like this, maybe I would be, and if it was me, say I was the Prime Minister of Canada, I would be like, listen, all right, I got it. Let's just sit down and hash this out. I get it. You're not taking over my country. I know this is how you like to negotiate. I know you, blah, 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 but it's not happening, but let's figure something out. I don't think this is really that difficult and of course, this is just three guys, us talking on the internet. We don't know the ins and outs and the intricacies of all these tariffs and how this all works, but it doesn't seem like it should be that difficult to the United States and Canada to figure something out where everybody's happy, everybody benefits, and nobody feels like they're being taken advantage of. Nobody's always happy in a negotiation. If one side's happy and the other side, if one side's completely happy and the other side isn't, something went drastically wrong, right? Usually in a negotiation, the best outcome is where nobody feels great, but nobody feels awful. Mm-hmm. And that's where we got to.
I was just going to say, there's absolutely no reason that the Canada and the U.S. can't come out with at least something of a win-win deal, as opposed to a win-lose or a lose-lose deal. And I mean, my feelings on tariffs are completely lose-lose, as I keep referencing that Ronald Reagan segment. That's that 90-second clip on YouTube about.
You love that. You love that Ronald Reagan segment. You will go.
I'll go deep to the well on that one every single time, because like, I know you say, oh, that's 40, 45 years ago. And I'm like, yeah, but everything he said holds true to this day. It's like, just what happens with tariffs is more tariffs, and then there's more tariffs, and then there's tariffs and tariffs, and there's no end to it, and it doesn't promote free trade or fair trade. It just makes trade barriers. So, I mean, yeah, at some point, like when I started speaking, there's absolutely no reason that Canada and the U.S. can't come up with a win-win deal where both countries are happy and both countries feel like, okay, we're going to both do well here. And there's no reason. Both Canada and the U.S. have the resources. Obviously, Canada has tons of resources compared to the population. The U.S. has tons of resources, as Trump likes to point out, that he doesn't need anything from Canada yet. Really, you kind of do, but that's a bit of another topic. So I just feel that there's zero reason for us not to be able to come up with a win-win deal.
I agree. Go ahead, Sam. You were going to say something.
The reason is much more ominous. And everyone keeps saying that up here, right? I can't understand where Trump's coming from. We have no idea what to do. We have no idea why he would want to do this. Right. Well, I know why he wants to do this, and he said why he wants to do this. So it's time for.
You think he wants to take the country over?
Absolutely.
You really think that?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
How many people think like that up there, Sam?
None. There's always been fringe associations and movements involving provinces, parts of provinces, and parts of states. Certainly, from a First Nations perspective, they don't care about Canada or the United States. They look at their territories and zones as completely sacred to them and neither country.
You're talking about up in Canada.
However, even in the States, I mean, the Métis Nation isn't exclusive to Canada, right? It's like the Métis Nation would bleed over across into various parts of the United States, and that's the way they would view the world map. Right. But to answer your question directly, maybe when all this talk started, there was I think there was a legitimate poll that showed up to 10% of Canadians would be interested in some kind of a partnership. But I think asking people to outright refer to themselves as something other than Canadian, that's where the rubber hits the road there. And they wouldn't I think, but by and large, Canadians are open to some kind of a partnership, as we had largely experienced before through NAFTA and whatever it was called after. Dave knows.
USMCA.
USMCA. And I think that the disappointment from Canadians' perspective is we thought that everyone was happy. I mean, Trump negotiated the last deal and described it as the best deal ever. I know he's a leader. What's he supposed to do? How's he supposed to promote it back home? Of course, maybe he wasn't as happy as he really was. But being asked to laugh about the sovereignty of our country, accepting it as a joke, a lighthearted joke. What happened? When does it stop becoming funny, and when is it an act of war? I mean, would this be acceptable with the UK, or would this be acceptable with Italy?
With Germany saying this to Poland, right?
Yeah. So why is it acceptable? It's not. When is it go beyond? When did it get confusing between trolling and an act of war? That's that's
I could listen. I could see you getting offended by it. I 100% could see you getting offended by it, and I think, in a way, he wants the people of Canada to get offended by it because he wants you to speak against the people that are in charge, and say, "Hey, do something, do something." I'm not talking about firing rockets, but get down and negotiate and actually do something, because you know what? We don't want to hear it anymore. And the guy's he's not playing around. Do something.
I totally agree with you. I just think it would be best coming from our Canadian leaders and not someone who uses annexation in the same sentence,
Dave, I just want to say, like, when you Sam, you were just saying how the liberal it has a pulse again up there. I'm shocked by that. I thought I thought Polyev was going to go in on roller skates. I thought he was no problem, and now you guys are telling me that this guy Carney is going to beat Polyev in an election, or has a chance to.
Let me take this one, Sammy. Let me take this first, Sammy, and then I'm going to divert to Sammy after me. So,
sure.
Okay. This is actually what I was about to say before you started talking, Jordan, was that guess who has given the Liberals all of this momentum?
Trump
is largely responsible for giving the Liberals a pulse again, because 2 months ago or 3 months ago, it was going to be a conservative supermajority. I've told you before, I believe, Jordan, that to win a majority in Canada, you need, I think it's 170 seats in Parliament. And, the Conservatives were looking like they were going to win 260. So it was going to be a supermajority, just like it was going to be no holds barred. 3 months ago, I was like questioning if the Liberal Party was even going to retain official party status. Official party status means what, Sammy? They need like 6 or 8 seats to be official party or something like that. And I was like, I'm not even sure if they're going to retain official party status after the next election. And then, a few months pass. The beginning of January, Trudeau prorogues Parliament and says he's going to resign, which took him 2 months, but he did finally resign. And then Carney comes in, and Carney gets elected by the Liberal Party, and the Liberal Party is still the ruling party. So that's why he suddenly became the prime minister, for anyone who's not aware of how that happens. It has happened several times in Canadian history in the past, so that's nothing new. But basically all this rhetoric from Trump over the last 2-3 months has given the Liberal Party the just. I don't know how they got life again, because yeah, like I said, 3 months ago, every poll was showing the Conservatives, even the left leaning polls were showing the Conservatives like just stomping all over everyone. And now it's it's just, it could be bad. It could be bad so there's other reasons why it could be bad as well too, and I can get into that. But Sammy, do you have anything to add to that about?
I would just say I would agree with everything you said. And before before we go any further, like I think you have to I certainly am not afraid to recognize the good things that Trump has done in this short period of time since he's brought a state of normalcy back to everyday shit. Like the taking gender identity right off the, it's not a discussion anymore, right? The whole idea of men participating in women's sports, again, another thing that, remember, it just got so crazy so fast in the world that I couldn't believe.
Immigration too.
Yeah, immigration, right? I couldn't believe how quickly I was talking, like putting my pronouns under my signature at work. I was, this is mandated. You had
Horrible.
to through these people and culture DEI initiatives, and so he has brought a lot of really common sense stuff back, right back to center where it belongs. Now, what Poilievre needs is he needs a really strong right-wing social media push. He needs Ben Shapiro the way that Ben Shapiro was involved in promoting Trump through the Trump-Biden campaigns. He needs Jordan Peterson to stand up for him. He needs Joe Rogan to do a special on him. He needs to get that whole right-wing bro movement, if that's what you want to call it. I have nothing against any of them. I think that they're all wonderful. But if Poilievre can bring it home with that kind of support, but unfortunately with a Donald Trump endorsement, that actually had a counter effect on the popularity of Poilievre. Believe it or not. And he's being compared to Trump now, and he's sagging in the polls because of it. That's the only thing I'd add.
How strong then was the conservative movement to begin with? Then that's I mean,
that's a good question,
right? I mean, to take that little for that, like the support that Dave and you were talking about that he had 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, I know.
To just erode. I mean, how serious was it then? I mean, was it real? Because, I mean, Trump has built such an, in the United States, obviously, as you know, has built such a movement. I mean, all the people you just mentioned, right? He's taken that over, and he didn't do it by force. This was organic. Ben Shapiro, yes, he's always been a very conservative guy, and Ben Shapiro's not always been a Trump person. Believe me. He hasn't been. But the Joe Rogans, the Theo Vons, all these guys, Elon Musk, these were guys with Democrats or center or left. And Trump, as you said, his common sense and the Democrats just being so crazy has brought these people over to his side. And when you talk about common sense, and Greg Gutfeld talks about this all the time on Fox, he says, when you're on the top of the hill on common sense, there's no way to go around. You can't flank common sense. So what the Republicans have done because of Donald Trump, because he's had the guts to do it and call out all the stuff that you were just talking about, because everybody was afraid because they didn't want to be called this, so they didn't want to call this phobe or this phobic. And he just didn't care. As you know, he doesn't care. And he said, this is nonsense. I know that I'm just saying what I know most people are really thinking. And he's basically taken the complete high ground. And the high ground is common sense. And you can't battle that You can't go. The Democrats have nowhere to go. It's kind of, but that's something that I'm saying. I don't think that Poilievre's built that type of a movement. Obviously, if it crumbled that quickly. Dave, go ahead.
Well, yeah. So I think a big reason why it crumbled so quickly is because there were so many people on the left, whether they were Liberal supporters or NDP, which is I told you before, Jordan, very left socialist type party in Canada, that everybody just got to the point of really, really hating Justin Trudeau. And Poilievre looked like the answer and the savior. And now that Carney's in there, all of these even slightly left-leaning people think that he's the second coming, so to speak. Not the second coming of Trudeau, but like the second coming of Christ. Like they just think he's, on high himself. That and again, I've mentioned it before. Mark Carney is an extremely smart person, Harvard and Oxford educated. He's had quite the career, like starting out at Goldman Sachs and being the governor of the Bank of Canada, the only non-Brit to be the governor of the Bank of England. So I definitely can't disagree with his education and his brains. He's a smart guy. But at the end of the day, he still has all these liberal policies. As Sam alluded to earlier, the cabinet that was sworn in with him on Friday is very, 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 very akin to Justin Trudeau's cabinet, that it's nearly the same. So, unfortunately, I think Mark Carney is simply, and the Liberals are simply fooling a lot of people into thinking, oh, now that Trudeau's gone, things are going to change. Well, how are things going to change when everything looks exactly the same? Right?
What's the definition of insanity?
Yeah, doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result.
Right. It sounds a lot like Barack Obama to me. Go ahead. Sorry, Sam.
No, I was just saying, I was just thinking as I was listening to Dave and I was listening to your commentary before about where the conservatives that fragile. That is a perspective that I had not considered until you had brought it up. That is something that should be talked about here. Like, there's nothing going that direction with our actual real media or not real media, but the media outlets that we follow up here. It's all about liberal momentum and the strength of Carney. That's why the Liberals have enjoyed that kind of momentum. But no one's asking the question about, okay, we know what has happened to the conservative movement, but why, right? And I think that's a discussion we need to have up here on a big scale.
Right. It's a great question.
How can three guys come up with this, right? On a podcast like this, but it's not talked about by a quote unquote expert. I don't know. That's fascinating to me.
Well, listen, you're talking about the media. The media up there, if it's anything like the media down here, was probably begging for somebody like Carney and to come along and just get Trudeau out of the way, and they have a new hero. And that's why I say it's kind of like Barack Obama, the way he kind of fooled a lot of people. Didn't fool me for a second, and he wouldn't have fooled you guys for a second. But he can fool a lot of people. Listen, obviously the three of us are pretty hyper tuned in, you're hyper tuned in to your politics in Canada. I'm hyper tuned in to the United States, and we're tuned in to the world, all three of us, obviously. Most people are not like us. They're just not.
That's
and
right.
There's nothing wrong with that. In fact, I kind of envy them sometimes where they're not hyper tuned into this stuff, because sometimes you feel like, oh my God, my life would probably be less stressful and easier if I really just didn't care, got my paycheck and, went on with my life and didn't worry about every little thing that the people that represent me stand for. But we're not like that.
But you're and I think that is that. Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, and I want to hear more. But this is where we really real issues, because what they don't understand about us is this shit keeps us up at night.
Yeah, right.
And it's frustrating when someone doesn't. I don't care if you oppose my view,
right?
But Jesus
Have a view.
Christ, it should be keeping you up at night.
Right.
Right?
Like nothing drives me more crazy than somebody who's like, "Oh, I really don't follow politics. It doesn't really matter to me."
Yeah.
How does it not matter to you? Hey, don't you understand
It's almost
that your
funny.
life? It's weird.
You know?
Yeah.
Anyway,
I feel the same way. It's hey, how do you not care? Like, wait a minute.
yeah.
Yeah.
There's nothing more worth caring about, you know?
Exactly. It's going to affect your life. It's going to affect, if you have children, it's going to affect them and your grandchildren and everybody else coming on down the line. All this stuff matters, you know, not, you know, I don't know. Some people just wired differently, you know, that's the way it is. But I said, that's fine. Go ahead. I'm sorry, Dave.
I was just going to say, and I think that's another answer, another part of an answer to your earlier question about like what happened to the conservatives and how did the liberals get so much momentum, is a lot of these people who don't care. And, you know, to also sort of add to your mainstream media. So here we have the CBC, Canadian Broadcast Corporation, and CTV, Canadian Television. And CBC is definitely left-leaning. They're definitely like pro-liberal. And so the people that don't care, yes, they just get their news from CBC, and CBC tells them, hey, Mark Carney is this highly educated person. He's great, blah, blah, blah. And they all of a sudden say, oh, wow, look at that. He's got a degree from Harvard and Oxford, and look at how smart he is. And
you know where they get their news? From their fucking Samsung feed. That's it. They all they get it is like a Google update in the morning. And,
right.
You know, past that, they don't know. They don't care.
Right.
And that's an expectation of a lot of heavy lifting on guys like us.
Well, you know what?
You know,
sorry, go ahead. And I'll
can we even still get Google News here? I thought all that news was like part of Trudeau, like banning news from Facebook and Google and all sorts of other platforms.
I'm not sure. I think I still feed. Maybe not.
Well,
but I think just to Jordan's point, you know, it's like we really, really follow this stuff morning, day, and night, right? And I don't understand how someone can be any less engaged.
They're just not. But I'll say this, and my next point was going to be this after you guys just mentioned that, is what Donald Trump has done in this country is made a lot more people pay attention. There are people that, there are people that never even heard, they couldn't spell vote. And now they vote, whether they like him or they love him. He is energized or gotten more people focused, not hyper-focused, but focused on politics than anybody probably in the history of this country. Yeah, he's brought people into the fold because he's interesting. Right. Whether you like him or not, he is interesting. He's just a different figure that we've never seen before, and we will never see again in our lifetime, no matter what. And I always say the people that are going to miss Trump the most are the people that hate him, because they're going to have nobody they might hate, say it's JD Vance in 2028. They might hate JD Vance. It can't be close to what they feel about Donald Trump. They are consumed by him. That's where Trump derangement syndrome comes from, and it's real. There are politicians, Democrats, pretty much 90% of the party now has Trump derangement syndrome. They are so twisted by him, they are defending the indefensible. The stuff we just talked about, you said before, Sam, with the men and women sports. They vote to keep that going. That's what they do. You know, all of this crazy stuff. There was just a bill the other day that passed bipartisan, but you had 100 and something Democrats vote against it to keep fentanyl out of the, to make fentanyl, like to punish people more for fentanyl. They are defending the indefensible. They have people destroying Teslas now because Elon Musk is helping Donald Trump. And somehow Democrats don't think that's domestic terrorism and it should just be, it's protesting. They are off the reservation. And it's because of Donald Trump. And getting back to the point is he has, I think we just
I don't know what happened to Sammy.
We just lost him.
I think I can get him back here, maybe.
There
we go. You
he is.
disappeared there, Sammy.
There's a lightning. Well, you guys are the ones that disappeared. I was here the whole time.
All right. Fair enough.
Yeah, there you go. That's fair. But I think that's what I'm saying is he's just he has brought people into the fold more, and in this country for sure. I mean, there's more people paying attention than there ever have been, ever. And like I said, we will never see anybody like him again, ever.
Yeah. One of the best things about Donald Trump, and it has nothing to do with politics, well, a little bit, but when he says things like, this will be great for ratings, it's just like, wow. Like,
that's when it's obvious, even though he's a politician, he's still not a politician. This guy's not thinking like a politician. Oh, I better be careful if I say this, it might hurt me here. He's like saying, oh, I'm going to get great. This is great television. Even with Zelensky, when the whole blow up happened in the Oval Office, he says at the end, he goes, wow, this is going to be good TV, isn't it? That's where his mind is. He's a showman. He's a master marketer. He's a brilliant marketer. And people that hate him admit he's a brilliant marketer.
Right.
And a lot of this stuff that we're talking about, like Sam, and I know it's pissing you off. A lot of this talk is marketing. Look what we're doing. We're talking about it. You're pissed off about it. You're saying, wait a minute, when is somebody in Canada going to stop it? When is somebody going to stand up to him and say, hey, knock it off? Because you just said you think it's leaning towards an act of war. Now, I might disagree with you, but that's how you feel. And you're saying is, hey, when the hell is somebody in Canada going to stand up and say, hey, Mr. President, knock it off because you're really starting to push the boundaries, and I'm going to have to do something soon. Yeah, where's that coming from?
It's just from the perspective of, if someone ever referred to President Trump, which I'll refer to him as because he's the leader of the country, right? President Trump. If anyone ever referred to him as a governor, I would expect every American to stand up and push and give that son of a bitch a shove, right?
I don't know.
Because that's our leader.
I guess because I've heard him called everything under the book from people in our own country in the other party, and from some people in the party. So
good point.
Good point. We've heard him called everything, and they don't give him the respect as the president, as you just did. They've never given him that respect. So I understand your point there, but in a way, it would just roll off our back, to be honest with you. But as the United States, right? The big brother, as you called it before, right? Right. Coming from the big brother to Canada, it is different. I understand where you're coming from when the president of the United States disrespects your elected leader, whether you like him or not, like that. I get it.
On the other hand, to your point, it's like if you don't want to be called an idiot, stop acting like an idiot, right? Right. Trudeau didn't do himself any favors. Like the constant anti, what we had lived with Dave and I have lived with and grown up with is a little bit of anti-American sentiment, right? And I don't know why even that's it. That is. I don't know.
Is that before Trudeau?
What's that?
Is that before Trudeau even? Like growing up?
Yeah.
Can you explain that? Because I never knew that. Can you explain where that?
Years ago, on a nationally publicized television program, for example, on the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, there was a show called Talking to Americans. And the whole gist of the show was to make fun of Americans who know nothing about their northern neighbor. So the show was widely popular in Canada because it made Canadians somehow feel smarter and morally superior to our American friends. Well, who's fucking laughing now, bitches? Right?
Right.
Where's our Talking to Americans show now, talking about how stupid Americans are now? Right. This is what happened. This is the elephant that Pierre Trudeau was talking about, right? Yeah, being best friends with the United States is like living with an elephant. You feel every twitch and move, right? Well, what happens when the elephant stands up and starts moving around, right?
And
Yeah.
So Dave and I were always used to this kind of anti-American vibe, right?
Right.
And I never understood it because I'd go to the States so often, and usually the further I went down, even the the better it would get. I've never been treated better in any country than the United States. Like when someone from the United States finds out I'm from Canada or Ontario, they're immediately inquisitive.
Yeah,
They want to
question.
know
Yeah.
more
Yeah.
about what it's, them asking questions about what it's like to live in Canada. I never viewed as stupid questions. I viewed them as honest questions because they're not, they,
they don't know how, or how, or
I
why
want to
would
know
they know?
more. And I want to know more about what it's like to live in the States. Every time I go down there, it's like amazing. It's clean. It's friendly. And when it comes to law enforcement, holy shit, man. I remember, I'll digress here for a second. I was in Richmond, Virginia. And I took the Applebee's down there. And there's this drunk guy, kind of a bar in the middle of and then tables for booths and stuff for families to sit in. There was a drunk guy at the Applebee's. Clearly his afternoon got away from him, whatever.
Right.
We were sitting there eating, and in this packed Applebee's, and I'm thinking in contrast to law enforcement in Canada, Jordan, I work for a Crown organization here in Ontario. I have oversight of security and surveillance. So while not being law enforcement, I'm minded in that direction, right? Mm-hmm. This drunk idiot, one cop, walks into the restaurant, taps the guy on the shoulder. Jordan knows what happened. That guy, the first sign of any type of resistance, that guy was dropped right there at the bar, dragged out of the restaurant for the protection of every other person in that entire building. No one was gasping or no one was surprised at all at the police response because they were called to eliminate the threat in that restaurant. In
Right.
Canada, you would see cops you'd see 2 or 3 of them standing around this guy, trying to crisis management, trying to effectively communicate, trying to figure out resources for this guy after we arrest him. And, what are we going to do with them after that? Right? The American cop had a very different lens. This guy's going to jail.
Well,
right?
It's kind of changed here a little bit, unfortunately, because of obviously things that have gone on over the past, I'd say 15 years with different presidents we've had. Donald Trump obviously is a huge supporter of law enforcement, which is one of the things that attracted me to him instantly. He always has been, even before he was, involved in politics. But it is a different mentality here. Yeah. I probably couldn't operate the way I used to now, like the way I did 20 years ago. You just couldn't. You can't. I mean, I watch the cops in England, and I see that kind of stuff going on where it's just, hey, somebody do something. Listen, Sam, but there's times here now in the United States where I'm watching tape, the body cams, and I'm saying, when is somebody going to put this person in handcuffs? Hey, let's go. This guy would have been done 10 minutes ago. So I think Jordan, that I don't want you to give the guys up there too hard of a time, because it's kind of gone that way everywhere.
No, it's like, it's the way they're being managed, and it's the way they're being directed,
trained.
right?
Yeah, trained.
I know
they're being trained. Yeah.
I know a lot of guys who are just waiting for those orders, right? There was a Metro Toronto cop received a death threat from a Palestinian protester at the Eaton Center, downtown Toronto. And that cop kept his composure, nothing even happened to the guy. Like, are you kidding me? I was always told with law enforcement to this day, best thing you can do is cooperate. And
100%.
A pro-Palestinian protester telling a cop he was going to kill him, and that was the end of it. The cop, for the sake of maintaining peace and not reacting to the threat, probably saved a larger situation.
Of course,
right?
It's like everything else. You got to pick your battles. You got to pick your battles. That's also part of the training, is to just, do you really think this guy's a threat? Those are things you need to assess, but they need to be assessed instantaneously as it's going on. That's what makes the job so difficult in a lot of ways, where things, those decisions are split seconds. This isn't television. We're not in the movies. And, it looks like it worked out well in that situation, but every situation's different. Like I was watching a video the other day with Tom Homan, who's the border czar. And Tom Homan is a former police officer. Tom Homan's a no-nonsense. I mean, you're talking about a no-nonsense individual. That guy's fantastic. And he was walking into a building in New York to talk about illegal immigration, and a mayoral candidate for New York City, who's a way far leftist, is screaming at him. I mean, screaming at him. And there's New York State troopers in his way. And I think if they're not in his way, he's getting up to Tom Homan because he's pushing on the pushing on him. In that case, I think that's too far. I'm in uniform, I'm saying it. Once you come up on me and your body's on me, it's over.
Yeah.
It's not happening. Because who in their right mind does that? Would you ever in your right mind go up to a police officer while he's doing his job lawfully and go up to him and get your body up on him to go get at somebody? Of course you wouldn't, because you think, hey, I'm going to jail. But they didn't arrest him. And that's one of those instances. I'm like, no, this guy needs to go, and he needs to go in front of everybody to set an example. This is not okay. Yeah. You have freedom of speech, but this isn't freedom of speech. You're causing a problem. It's called disorderly conduct. You're causing everybody else there to be alarmed. You're causing a problem. You're causing public nuisance. You're allowed to have your free speech, but there comes with limits. There, of course, is that limit. And I don't want people to take that the wrong way.
It comes with responsibility.
100%. And it is also called common just courtesy for everybody else around you. You don't get to take over an entire building because you're upset. It just doesn't go that way.
I think a pretty good rule of thumb is don't push or try to get into a fight with the guy carrying the gun.
Of course not. It's just stupid. and everybody always says, regardless, and that's a good point, Dave, is even if you don't have a gun, he does. So there's a gun involved in this situation. And I've had people try to take my gun, and that cannot happen, obviously. So once you're fighting or resisting arrest or up on a police officer like that, there is a gun involved, whether you have one or not. So when people say unarmed person got killed, well, there was an armed person who didn't want to get killed with his gun. We could go into this, and that could be a whole nother podcast. We could do that. That would be, but I could talk about that. Yeah. But
I think to your point, Jordan, and a lot of people don't understand especially these Palestinian protesters up here. And I don't want to, like the guys from Greenpeace and these kind of guys, they're the least of anyone's worry anymore, right? The Greenpeace protesters have been trained by legal representation on exactly how to lawfully protest, how to take it right up to the line, and still get your point across without getting arrested in other sense. Nice. And you approach a police officer is looking at this from and not having been one, I've trained in this area. And it's like they're looking for imminent danger, someone who has a weapon, the intent to use that weapon, and a means of delivering that weapon to you. If someone's close to your physical person as a police officer, the only thing they have to articulate is intent at that point, right? So at that point, any sudden draw, any any certain body movement should result in you going to jail.
We were trained, it was called
and
the personal danger zone, PDZ. You don't let people get in your personal danger zone. Because like I said, you have a weapon. You know, that weapon can be taken from you. You're carrying other weapons. You have pepper spray. You have a baton. You don't let people get up on you. You just don't do it. And it's not because you're not trying to be friendly. It's just tactically not the right thing to do, because you don't know what somebody's thinking. You can't see inside somebody's head. So just for the safety of everybody, you shouldn't have people up on you like that. I forgot what else I was going to say. But if it comes back to me, but if you had something, go ahead, Dave. If it comes back to me, I'll say it.
I was just going to kind of circle back to Sam's point about that show, Talking to Americans. It was actually a skit, a segment on a show called This Hour Has 22 Minutes. And yeah, so that was back in the early 90s. The host of the show was Rick Mercer, or the host of the skit segment. And at the end of the day, some of it was like entertaining and funny, but I totally agree with Sam's point of like, well, how are Americans supposed to know about Canada when they're never taught anything about Canada? And, you know, so, and it definitely is, like I think Sam mentioned before, that sort of little brother syndrome, a lot. So, yeah, I just wanted to make that point about that, and to say the same as Sam, as every time I've traveled to the U.S., whether it's just crossing the border into upstate New York or driving all the way down to Florida, or the various airports I've had layovers at, you know, it's just always been super friendly, super nice people. And man, yeah, just
salt of the earth
and great food. Great food. The further you go south, the better the food gets, it seems.
Well, unless you want pizza, then you stop right here.
Oh, okay,
pizza and bagels, you stop right here. And then that's the best in the world right there. But yeah. I think, is, you know, most Americans, when they think of Canada, they think hockey. And we were talking about hockey.
Most Americans don't think about Canada.
No,
these past 3 months has been the most Americans have ever thought about Canada. So all of a sudden, Canadians are like, "Hey, wow, they're actually thinking about us. They're talking about us. This is the first time in my whole life."
But hockey fans always think about, you know, Canada, obviously.
Yeah, of course.
You know, and but I think, I mean, Americans, like, I guess the whole, I was always a hockey fan, so I always knew about Canada, obviously. But in that regard, but I never, there was never any show down here that was, you know, busting on Canadians or anything like that. There was never any TV show that went, you know, did anything like you guys are talking about. That's for sure. But I guess
South Park does it a little bit.
South Park does it to everybody. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
They're equal opportunity. They just, anybody's a target. So yeah. But one last thing about, and before I forget about the protest, and then we can move on. The thing for a cop that people need to understand: a cop is there to make sure that the protest is held safely. It's not to be there to be a deterrent.
Not
to stop the protest. But the way things were done, and I said this on a space the other night I was in, is when I was in the NYPD from 96 to 02, and then I moved on to another department where I finished my career the last 20 years. But Rudy Giuliani was the mayor, and we never had protests where the streets were ever taken over. It just didn't happen. If you wanted to protest, you applied for a permit, you applied for an area you were going to be in, and a time, and a sound decibel system, or whatever, you know, a sound decibel level. Everything was all planned out. No matter what it was, you came, you protested, you said what you had to say, and once the time was up, you left. And I was there, as I said, to make sure that nobody stopped you from protesting, to make sure that your protest could go on safely and you could say what you needed to say. And that was it. And we've gotten so far away from that where, you know, we have people roaming streets now, shutting down highways. No, this needs to be stopped. You don't get to just do that. You don't get to just shut a street down and ruin everybody else's life because you're upset about something, you know? And I'm not talking about the trucker convoy. That's a totally different story where that's I don't want to equivocate that to anything, because That had to be done, in my opinion. I'd loved it. And I said, Dave, the last time we were talking, I would love to get into that because I thought that was an amazing thing that those guys and that they did. It had to be done. But that in general, but protests should be organized. They should be peaceful, obviously. And they and that's it. And we've gotten away from that. And I think we have to get back to it. But go ahead.
So I want to add to that actually. Here I don't know if it's happening in the US, it may or may not be, but here we're beginning, and Sam already alluded to them earlier, Palestinian protesters. And, I don't care if you want to wave your Palestinian flag, it's a free country, just the same way as I have a Canadian flag behind me. If you want to wave your Palestinian flag, all the power to you. It's a free country. But when all of a sudden you're throwing bricks through the windows of Jewish bakeries and burning down Jewish cafes in Montreal, while Justin Trudeau's at a Taylor Swift concert in Toronto, by the way, like that's where it's suddenly no longer a peaceful protest. You're breaking the law. You can't just burn down buildings. You can't vandalize.
That's a riot. That's a
things.
riot, Dave. That's a riot.
Yeah.
That's the thing. These protests are not protests; they're riots, and we're having them in on college campuses with the Palestinians, and it's a big thing now. We're trying to deport somebody, but yes, those are not protests; those are riots.
Yeah, exactly. So, and then we're also having the same thing here with busy streets in Toronto, as you alluded to. They're just all of a sudden deciding to kneel down and pray and block off the street. And I mean, if anybody who follows me on X knows I talk about how bad traffic is in Toronto pretty much every time I have to drive there. And so when all of a sudden you've got these 20, 30, 50, 80 people just blocking off streets because they think they can or they want to. And again, yeah, like Sam said, the police are just sort of there watching them and not removing them. And it's becoming frustrating. And again, I'm not saying I definitely am supporting the right to peaceful protest. So, and I'm not Jewish or Palestinian or Arab. I don't have a horse in this race, right? So I don't really care either way. Well, I do, I guess, care. Yeah. But at the end of the day, it's like, sure, go ahead and have peaceful protests. That's a stable of democracy is being able to protest peacefully. But as you just mentioned, Jordan, when it turns into a riot, then it's not acceptable.
I also don't think that they should be able to just block streets. People have lives, and you're disrupting other people's lives, and that's against the law. That's not a protest. Right. That like I said, okay, it might be a peaceful form of civil disobedience or protest because I'm just kneeling down. I'm not hurting anybody, but no, you are basically impeding everybody else's life. You don't get the right to do that. There are people that, who knows, there might be somebody down that's stuck in that traffic trying to get to a hospital. You're causing a danger. You're not protesting. In that case, you are causing a problem. And if you want to go kneel down on the street, get a permit and kneel down on the street when the street's legally closed.
But it does, and Jordan, you guys are absolutely right. But I think where the societal anger comes in, and this isn't Canadian versus American. This is, I think, is everybody right now, whether you're in Canada or not in Canada. I've never attended a protest, actually. Like it's not something that's on my mind to do. So what the fuck are all these people thinking about all the time and doing? Like in my 51 years, I've never, I think maybe I might have silently protested something my mother said but I've never gone to an organized protest.
I did once. I actually did. I went, I'll tell you.
What was the
it was
cause?
in 1999. I was on the job about 3 years, and we had an incident down here where I don't know if you guys ever heard of it. His name was Amadou Diallo. He was shot 41 times by plainclothes cops. Okay.
Yeah.
And
Malcolm Gladwell, the author of Blink.
No.
You ever heard of this? Malcolm Gladwell writes about Amadou Diallo. Bruce Springsteen wrote a song called 47.
Of course he did. Scott. So, of course he did. But what happened there was, it was
I know all about Amadou Diallo. He's central to our crisis management training and what we train to our protection
Okay,
services
so
staff.
it was a tragic error.
Yeah, but anyway,
tragic
continue.
mistake. And those cops were put on trial of, as usual in New York, the prosecution, overreached, and they tried to charge these guys with basically murder. And with basically saying, oh, they went out that night and were looking to kill somebody, which was absolutely ridiculous. It was a horrible accident. A lot of things went wrong, and a lot of things went wrong very quickly. And, and the man lost his life tragically. Now, civilly, should they have been held liable? They were working for New York City. You could sue New York City. They would be indemnified by New York City, of course. But of course, it turned into a political mess. And you had celebrities, just like now, getting arrested in front of One Police Plaza, protesting. And what basically happened is they weren't going to get a fair trial in New York City, because it was so publicized that there was no way a New York City jury would be able to, hasn't heard of this or hasn't just been deeply invested in this. That's how big it was. So we went to the New York City Police Union, which I was a member of back then, organized a protest in front of the Bronx courthouse. And, just to be out there. And, again, we didn't just run to the courthouse and block the courthouse. No, it was a blocked off area set up. We had police officers who were working. We were any cops that were off to go. There were police officers who were working, standing around, making sure that we could protest. And we walked around in front of the courthouse with some signs saying, hey, this trial's got to get moved. They can't get a fair trial. And I actually got interviewed. Somebody from, I think it was Channel 4, NBC, came up to me and I said, he's like, what are you guys doing out here? And I said, we're just out here making sure that these cops get a fair trial, just like everybody else is entitled to. Because I said, that's what America's all about. And that was it. And it actually ends up that it did turn into such a fiasco by the prosecution and the protests and the Al Sharptons. Yes, he was even worse back then. That the trial did get moved to Albany, because it was a judge agreed, said, yeah, there's no way these guys get a fair trial in New York City. And they got moved to Albany, and they ended up getting acquitted, every single one of them, on every charge. So it actually, that's my story of my organized protest that I went to.
Well, hats off to the officers who were acquitted, because this can look like a gun in a fast, dark, ever quickly changing scenario.
And there were other things that happened there. Right? It was in a dark vestibule he was in, and once one cop shot, there's flashes, and then they thought and a couple of ricochets, and they thought gunfire was coming back at them, and it went horribly wrong, horribly fast. Thank God, knock on wood, nothing like that has happened ever again. But yeah, it wasn't a good time. And when they got acquitted, it was obviously, I'm sure, awful for his family, but nobody felt good about that, obviously. But it also was a big deal for law enforcement to say, geez, I mean, we have to be able to do our job and not, it's hard enough. And I always bring it up. If a pilot crashes a plane, God forbid, do they try to throw the pilot in jail if he lives? No, they'll call it pilot error and they sue the airline. That's kind of what that was. It was kind of like a pilot error, and it was an awful mistake. There was no ill intent whatsoever. It just went badly, badly, badly wrong. So that was it.
I too have only ever been to one protest.
The difference being, I can understand. Yeah.
Oh, I was just going to say the only protest I've ever been to was the first Saturday morning of the trucker convoy, actually. So I did not stick around Ottawa for 2 weeks.
Now, well, you're a courier, right?
Well, I can understand the reason behind both protests. Like in Dave's case, I can understand the trucker
100%.
protest. I can certainly understand the frontline policing protest in the Amadou Diallo case and the way it was happening. But I can't understand. I can't understand protesting a group. I can't understand protesting against a country where you're taking advantage of everything that they're offering you. Like why did you come here then?
Yeah.
Right? Be it Canada or the United States. Why did you come?
It's a good
Right?
question. I don't think anybody can answer that question. I think, but I guess the way we can deal with it is to say that's why we have great countries, because even though how ridiculous it sounds to us, they're allowed to do it peacefully, right? And part of the reason, I guess, why they did come is to be able to do it because they can't do it where they're from. You know, you can't do it where they're from. So I guess part of the thing is to say, oh, wow, I actually get to have a voice here. And whether anybody agrees with me or not, I'm going to make my voice heard. That's fine. But once you start, like we talked about, once you start getting into obstructing other people's lives and violence, no, that we draw the line there.
Let's get another, let's get something else from Trump there. Let's get one more saying from Trump.
You want one more? All right, let's see what he's got.
I have a running war with the media. They are among the most dishonest human beings on earth.
Okay.
He's right. When he's
right,
he's right.
Hold on, we got to get one more. And I know he doesn't say anything about Canada on this thing. I know he doesn't, because it's a little. Listen, if this was new, he might come up with a Canada saying, but it's not.
Yeah.
I don't frankly have time for total political correctness, and this country doesn't have time either.
There you go.
All right.
Words of wisdom.
I do like that quote about the media.
Yeah, yeah, we all do. Oh, Sam, before we go, I got to say, you know who you remind me of? You have to have heard this. You have to have heard this before. All right.
Hank. Hank from Breaking Bad.
Yes.
Yeah. I've been stopped. I've been people have taken their selfies with me.
The minute I saw you, I'm like, it's Hank from Breaking Bad. And Dave, Sam, do you know that Dave has not watched that show?
I've never seen it.
Dave.
I've never seen it.
Breaking
I've never
Bad?
seen it.
Yeah, right.
No, I haven't. I've never watched it.
Yeah, I've gotten that a little.
I'm sure. I said, this is Hank. I said, that's him. That's funny. That's funny. Well, but
well, maybe we'll get on again. We'll get on another podcast sometime soon, and we can get a little bit more into law enforcement security.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, definitely. And even if we can get somebody, another person from law enforcement, I'd love that too. Like, that would be great. Yeah, I'd love to get something like that going. No doubt.
Sure. No
doubt.
The fake blue line.
Okay, guys, over an hour, and I thank you guys so much for being here. It's been a lot of fun chatting with you again, and yeah, I definitely hope to do it again soon. And with that said, anybody who's been watching, we thank you all so much for watching, and don't forget to click subscribe if you're watching on YouTube. On Jordan's channel is also linked in the description if you're watching on mine. And both Sam and Jordan linked in the description to their X, although Sam is never, ever on X. You should get on X more often, Sammy.
Yeah, Sam.
And
Sam,
yeah, okay, awesome.
Why is that, Sam?
I'm waiting for the highest bidder.
I mean, it's the best platform going. It's not even close.
Yeah, highest bidder. I don't even know what that means.
I don't know either. I'll follow you guys.
All right. I followed you, Sam. I followed you. So follow me.
All right. Thanks.
All right. Thanks, Dave.
All right,
thanks again, Dave.
Thank you. See you next time.
God bless.
Take care, guys.
Bye.